Let's talk about a wonderful organization called Hospice. In 1968, Cecilia Saunders formed the famous St. Christopher's Hospice in London, England. It's really necessary first to appreciate that hospice is not a place, but a concept of caring that provides comfort and support both to people in the final stages of terminal illness and to their families. Hospice services are often delivered in a patient's home, but they can also take place in a hospital, nursing home, or residential facility. Hospice care emphasizes the quality, not the length of life, and generally takes a team approach involving medical personnel, nurses, clergy, social workers, volunteers, and counselors, among others. Hospice works at helping to take the fear out of death. Some people might be familiar with the tale of the Baghdad merchant who sent his servant out to buy provisions. The servant came back pale with fear, saying, "Master, just now in the marketplace I was jostled by a man in the crowd. I turned about and I saw death. He stared at me and made a threatening gesture. Therefore, lend me your horse and I will ride to Samaria, where death cannot find me." The good merchant lent the horse, and the servant mounted it and rode off as fast as the horse could gallop. The merchant himself then went down to the marketplace, and as he strolled around, he too saw death standing in the throng. He approached him, asking, "Why did you make a threatening gesture to my servant when you saw him earlier this day?" Death replied, "That was not a threatening gesture, merely a look of surprise. You see, I was astonished to find your servant in Baghdad, for tonight I have an appointment with him in Samaria." The fear of death has many real components and is shaped by an individual's age, intellect, health, family history, psychological state, and religious background. Even current events such as recent mass murders, natural disasters resulting in death, or deaths of well-known prominent people can influence a person's degree of fear. There are, however, 5 primary categories of fear associated with death that should be examined, and it is important to see how hospice addresses each issue. Because the timing and nature of one's death are unknown, human beings recognize that unless they die suddenly, they run the risk of dying over some greater or lesser amount of time. They are able to project and imagine the conflict between dying with dignity and fighting for life. This struggle creates tension and fear around the process of dying. It is this fear that hospice so wonderfully addresses. Let's talk about the process of dying as painful. Historically, the Christian faith has taught that in the end, the forces of good and evil fight to claim the immortal soul, and such separation of the soul from the body involves pain. The more contemporary view is that disease disrupts the natural biological processes, and people fear the agonizing pain they know might accompany conditions such as cancer and emphysema. Simply put, goal number 1 for hospice is to control and manage pain. Each physician and nurse that works in a hospice is dedicated to pain management. Death should be a peaceful transition, and because of hospice, it can be. Now let's take a look at the process of dying as undignified. It is possible that our high-tech scientific mindset towards healthcare treatment, coupled with our prudishness about death, has dehumanized the process of dying to such an extent that some people might even be ashamed or even embarrassed to die. On the other hand, there are genuine dignity issues for many people who might not readily accept hospital gowns, tubes, catheters, needles, and machines, as well as the pushing, probing, and prying of nurses, interns, residents, and physicians. Men and women alike fear the humiliation of urinating in a bedpan, bed sores causing unpleasant odors, and the severe weight and/or hair loss that might accompany illness, terminal or otherwise. Hospice encourages death at home with familiar surroundings. Every individual who has a limited life expectancy should have the opportunity to die at home with, Ready? On the other hand, there are genuine dignity issues for many people who might not readily accept hospital gowns, tubes, catheters, needles, and machines, as well as the pushing, probing, and prying of nurses, interns, residents, and physicians. Men and women alike fear the humiliation of urinating in the bedpan, bed sores causing unpleasant odors, and the severe weight and or hair loss that might accompany illness, terminal or otherwise. Hospice encourages death at home with familiar surroundings. Every individual who has a limited life Okay. Sorry. Can I go back just to hospice or not? Try not to mess it up this time. If we mess up this time, then I need to change the word because it's the same thing. Familiar.
Same pickup. Number 3.
On the other hand, there are genuine dignity issues for many people who might not readily accept hospital gowns, tubes, catheters, needles, and machines, as well as the pushing, probing, and prying of nurses, interns, residents, and physicians. Men and women alike fear the humiliation of urinating in a bedpan, bed sores causing unpleasant odors, and the severe weight and or hair loss that might accompany illness, terminal or otherwise. Hospice encourages death at home with familiar surroundings. Every individual who has a limited life expectancy should have the opportunity to die at home with family and friends gathered around the bedside. Love and compassion can heal a broken spirit, even in a dying person. Let's take a look at the process of dying as a burden to others. Statistically, few people die by accidental means, and with medical science prolonging life, or depending on how you look at it, prolonging the process of dying, it is not unrealistic to fear becoming a burden to others. Dying gives rise to a wide range of emotions among family members. Depending on the nature of the relationship, the dying person might evoke feelings of sympathy, love, tenderness, pity, hate, disgust, or guilt among individuals in his or her immediate circle. Some of the feelings might be linked to the financial or time constraints that the dying person's illness places on others. This fear of being a burden to others is likely to be particularly acute in societies like ours that place a high value on independence and self-sufficiency. Hospice uses compassionate, caring volunteers to make sure that the dying patient is not a burden to family and friends. For example, when the family needs a break from being with the dying patient 24/7, hospice moves in with nurses and volunteers to give the family respite, to let the family get away. Many times the patient will have a surge of feeling better after the family gets this break. Next, let's look at the loss of life. Death is the loss of life as we know it, and can trigger feelings of enormous vulnerability. Loss of life means loss of control over self, perhaps others, and life experiences. Death seems passive, not active. It flies in the face of a participative, masterful, alternative-filled existence. Individuals might fear the power of death to which they must ultimately submit. Another facet of fearing the loss of life is the sense of incompleteness or failure. Death has no respect for unmet goals or ambitions or unfinished tasks. People with a well-developed sense of responsibility or a sense of adventure might become depressed or angry at the prospect of no more opportunity, creativity, new experiences, or fulfillment of life's dream. Finally, death as a loss of life is feared because it means separation from people, places, and things that are loved and treasured. This fear is often accompanied by feelings of sadness, grief, and worry over the future of survivors. Hospice has highly trained social workers and psychologists to isolate each of these fears and deal with them. Hospice also follows up on family members for 13 months after a patient dies, many times offering adult and child counseling, support groups, seminars, literature, and newsletters. Hospice is there for the family. Lastly, let's discuss the fear of what happens after death. This final category of fear encompasses physical, moral, and mystical components. Death means the destruction of the body, whether through decay, fire, or disability, for educational or humanitarian purposes. Few people can be expected to find these prospects pleasant or even imaginable. The fate of the body can be of extreme concern to individuals who have spent years of effort trying to preserve it through proper nutrition, exercise, and rest. The funeral industry responds to this fear with embalming, sturdy caskets, graves lined with metal. While a funeral director might be of help to clients in visualizing the services and rites that will be performed, there remains difficulty in associating oneself with the concept of a corpse. Another fear associated with what happens after death involves the fear of judgment. Although this thought is traditionally linked to certain religious teachings, it can also surface among non-religious people. Simply stated, people wonder if there is a God and wonder what God thinks about them, whether God likes them or not. Like a child who is fearful of an angry father, some people are afraid that eventually they will confront a hostile, punishing God who will make them suffer for mistakes they have made on earth. Ultimately, fear of what happens after death is largely related to fear of the unknown. How can people prepare for a post-death experience when no one knows for sure if there is such a thing? As in life, when there is no information and no control, anxiety increases. What's interesting about all this is the way hospice moves in and is not afraid to address the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological. The multidisciplinary hospice team will include clergy, spiritual advisors, social workers, counselors, psychologists, or hospice will work with your minister or priest or rabbi to outline a spiritual plan for the patient and family. Hospice is one of the finest health programs we have in America. Yet, last year, less than 30% of the deaths in America were hospice deaths. Amazingly, over 60% of the deaths could have been hospice deaths. I encourage you to let hospice help. For more information on hospice and the grieving process, please select one of the options on this page.